Hello, welcome to Ethereal Mechanics video number 25. This is Distinti's Universe video number 6. We're going to talk about the universe, galaxies, and black holes. This video explains the universe, galaxies, and black holes in a manner which is consistent with Ethereal Mechanics. And we got to remember, though, with rule of acquisition number 11, there may be infinite number of theories that could rationally explain any given set of observations. So this is just one explanation to all the observations we're going to cover. I'm not saying it's the absolute truth, but this is the one that makes the most sense right now. Okay, so one thing we got to remember is until anybody actually goes to the edge of the universe to actually see what's there, anything we do now is just a guess. And scientists say that the universe was formed from one big explosion. Well, let's explore the logic of this hypothesis by reviewing a little explosion first. Okay, if we look at an explosion, a symmetrical explosion, you'll find that in a radial direction around the center of the origin, everything behaves almost essentially the same. And in between all this, I'm sure there's smoke and other kinds of debris that fill the gaps in here that might not be seen from the photograph. So in every radial direction, things behave the same. And between all the large particles is a similar amount of smaller particles, smoke. Okay, this is consistent with rule of acquisition number 22, the common behavior tell, which says if all things appear to be acting alike, then there must be a reason or a cause. Okay, but if we look at a deep field probe photograph of the universe and we look at all these galaxies, they do not look like they have been caused by the same event. You know, this galaxy's on its side, this guy is a spiral galaxy, you know, this guy, they don't look like they're part of, they don't look like they're behaving the same. Let's put it that way. And the other thing that's really remarkable that we picked up on video number 5 is the space in between is remarkably clean. I mean, there's no other way that we could see galaxies this far away unless the space between us and that galaxy is virtually clean of any kind of debris, because that far a little speck of dust in between us and them you know, could obscure anything we're looking at. But the interesting thing is if you look at galaxies themselves, they look like explosions. I mean, there you got the common behavior of the things radially around the center. And look at all this debris and dirt. I mean, we would expect filth and debris if this was a violent explosion. I mean, look at the explosion ring here. So galaxies look like independent events. But before we go into that, we got to start with black holes. In order to explain how the universe formed, we need to begin with black holes. According to ethereal mechanics, this is how nature preserves matter and reduces the rate at which ether is consumed. It's sort of like the way humans can vegetables for preservation. So what is a black hole? There should be a question mark here. From video 27 about the sun, or stars in general, a black hole is an all-fusion star. The result of this pure fusion is not heavier elements as one would assume. Rather, it's very dense proto-material that I call galaxium. It's the canned matter that will one day form a galaxy. So let's go back to video number 23. It was demonstrated that if we had 1,500 Olympic-sized swimming pools filled with carbon, okay, that would only contain enough protons, electrons, and neutrons to fill one M&M. That's normal matter. But in ethereal mechanics, protons, electrons, and neutrons are composed of inertialess charged particles which are thousands of times smaller. And you can see my preliminary paper at Distinti.com, docs, any hydrogen PDF. This directory is explorable, so you can go and look at all the documents in there. But back then, though, I called them massless charged particles. That's an oxymoron. You have to look at the video called the mass paradox to find out why it really should be called inertialess charged particles. But when we go to ethereal mechanics, the actual inertialess particles would actually be so much smaller you wouldn't see them. This material is what I call galaxium. And what is galaxium? Well, normal matter exhibits the property. We have to remember that according to ethereal mechanics, normal matter exhibits the properties of volume, inertia, energy, and all that stuff. And all that stuff are electromagnetic interactions between the inertialess charged particles. Okay, but we'll do more complete modeling in the later videos of this. But right now, that's the stuff that's released as far as documents is enough to explain where we're going with this. Okay, but how do we make Galaxium? Well, once inertialess particles that make up matter attain the speed of light relative to the ether, the Coulomb forces and the magnetic forces completely cancel. And you can see the paper ng.pdf for an early example. Okay, and once those forces cancel, the interactions, the Coulomb interactions stop. Okay, so where does that happen? Well, when a star becomes massive, so massive that it can consume ether at such a rate that the velocity of ether attains the speed of light at the surface. Okay, and then so what happens is all the matter at the surface loses its ability to form regular matter, and all those inertialess particles, and I'm showing a little tiny thing of the shell. This is occurring just on the outer shell of the star. Okay, ether is hitting it at the speed of light, which causes all of the protons, electrons, and neutrons to collapse into a amalgam, for lack of a better word, of massless charged particles that no longer exhibit any field phenomenon. And what happens is now this thick layer of inertialess charged particles no longer emit any field phenomenon. They then form such a tight barrier and they absorb all the ether coming in that they starve the interior of the star with ether. And once the ether in the interior of the star is depleted, okay, and depletion will occur very rapidly, once the depletion of the interior, the charges in the interior are going to turn off, just like you turn off a light bulb. Without ether, charges have no fuel to emit fields, so they are all turned off. Without electromagnetic fields or ether, there is no such thing as heat, light, inertia, energy. None of the normal things that we attribute to mass or matter. And so this massive cauldron of heat and chaos turns off for the same effect as turning off a light switch. The result is a black hole comprised of solid Galaxium, where the interior of the black hole is just solid, massless, or inertialess charged particles. Just, they're probably not packed like that. They're probably just packed like cannonballs. Okay, drew it that way. Should have drew it that way. Where the outer layer is a very thin layer, which is absorbing all the ether. Okay, they're the only ones that are absorbing ether, and because they're traveling at the speed of light, they have no fields either. Ether, whatever. And so, one might say, well, because of this cauldron of a star just turned off, you're like, where did all that energy go? That sounds like a violation of conservation of energy. And in fact, it's not really, because if you look at a flashlight, this is a flashlight and a battery. If you snip the connection between the battery and the bulb, it turns off instantly. It's an electrical circuit. Okay, and I'm going to show you the same thing with ether. Once you deprive the ether to this massive cauldron, it'll shut off like a light bulb. It's an electronic circuit. We're going to show you in ethereal mechanics that everything is electronic circuits. Everything. And everything can then work at the speed of light. You should be able to turn off something instantly. So then we can hit this point home. I mean, if we deprive the ether from the battery will not be able to, it will be useless. Okay, because the only way, from video number 21, for a battery to store energy is to consume more ether. And so if you deprive the battery of ether, the battery turns off. Once the battery turns off, the light turns off. It all goes back to the ether. And the beautiful thing about this is these black holes, these big balls of Galaxium, are Mother Nature's way to conserve ether. Since the outer layer consumes ether, the consumption of ether is proportional to the surface area of the black hole, okay, which is this equation here. This is different from fluffy normal matter, which the consumption of ether is proportional to the velocity, which is an r cubed. So this is Mother Nature's way of reducing the rate at which the universe consumes ether. It's like canning. So now that we know what black holes are, let's look at one possible theory for the formation of the universe. Well, one possibility is that t equals 0, the universe is composed of solid frozen, I'm saying frozen because there's no such thing as temperature, but it's solid ether. That's the idea here. And dispersed in that solid are bubbles of galaxium. And that's how the universe started. What happened before that? I don't know. This is just a theory of one possible explanation that fits the observations. There could be a lot of other ones. Okay, then what happens is after things start, these balls of galaxium has to consume ether. So in these areas is normal space where ether is flowing in. So in other words, you get solid ether that's sublimating into more of a gas-like ether that we know of now, that is then flowing in to feed the outer shell of the black hole. And because if you read the Wikipedia article on vortices, free vortices will automatically start up a rotation. Okay, this one might actually occur in this dimension. And this one might occur in this dimension. This one might occur in this dimension. This one might be in this direction. They can occur any which way. They're independent events. Like I said before, these are eventually going to be the formation of galaxies. Then a connection occurs. As the ether diminishes, eventually these little polywog eggs, one of them is going to, eventually they're all going to connect, but let's look at one case first. Because ether now is depleting here and it's flowing into that depletion from out here, there's going to be a gravitational pull for these guys to pull into each other. But because there's a rotation going on, they're going to go and assume possibly an orbit about each other. They can hit straight on depending on how the rotation is. But let's assume that they're going to go into orbit about each other. And then they start spinning up the ether and they're consuming more. This bubble still grows. I show it round, but it's probably oblong at this point. Then what happens is they start spinning up the ether at such a high rate that along this axis here, the ether is too dense to maintain the outer shell stability on the inside of the black holes. And so what happens is these black hole, the containment fails. And the matter starts inflating, like, you know, those snakes you used to light at 4th of July. You know, you get a little tablet. It keeps expanding this very long volume of snake from this little tiny dense cube tablet. But this matter is very, very dirty matter, because this is going to be a slow, well, relatively slow expulsion of matter. It's just like if you hold two hoses against each other. Where does the matter go? Where does the water go? Water is going to go in a disc between where the two water nozzles hit, and that's what's happening here. Some's actually coming up, but it's not shown because it's a two-dimensional print. But what happens, because these guys are spinning, that matter gets thrown out, and that's how we start the spiral formation of a spiral galaxy. Eventually, when the cores deplete enough of their matter, they're going to explode, and the center of your galaxy is going to be much more of a round ball shape, much more clean, where you have more dirt around the outside, but a much more cleaner core. It's the only way I can explain the clean core. So you can have a much more cleaner core. This bright haze here is the core. And that's going to be the final explosion of the remnants of the two initial black. Now, other black holes are probably definitely going to form in there afterwards. Not a problem there. But you can see all the dirt and filth around the outside. But here's an assumption I'm going to make. Actually, this should have come a little after. Well, anyway. The more stable the orbit of the original black holes, the more slow the inflation of the matter from the galaxium will be. Slowly inflated matter will necessarily be more filthy, more dirt, less stars. And the galaxy will have more longevity, because instead of all of your matter going into making stars, which will start cooking that matter really fast, a lot of it's just unstable matter that will eventually collect together to form stars. So you'll have a much more long-lasting galaxy. Another type of formation is when the two black holes come at each other head-on, maybe because both of their rotations are in the same direction, who knows. And so you get the initial flare out in the middle of debris, and then of course they're going to hit and they're going to deform, and once they deform, they're not going to be able to attain ether at a stable rate, and they're going to detonate into a humongous explosion, which will give that bright haze in the middle of pure starlight. This haze is all stars. It's so far away they look like a haze. These stars here are stars that are close to us. They're not in this galaxy. Right? Some of these, though, are galaxies that are very, very far away. And so you get a sombrero shape. And here's your debris field from the initial point where the ether started expanding, or the Galaxium started expanding. Eventually, all these independent events are going to connect. And because of the ethereal viscosity, the connected portions of this multiverse that we're in now may be larger than we could possibly observe from Earth, because light cannot propagate forever without loss. That is one of the original tenets from video number 5. And solar system is going to form in a similar way. Two stars are going to come close to each other, and they're going to have the same instability, and they're going to eject matter, but they're not going to do a final explosion like the black hole. They're probably, the remnants just form together, clump together into a remnant star. And then this accretion disk of matter will eventually condense into planets. But this matter here is going to be mostly solid elements. It's going to be mostly, there's going to be no chemical elements there, because there's no, the stuff is ejected as pure elements. That was video, I forget what video that was. But here's a possibility for the, I keep saying common mode, but it's cosmic microwave background. My brain keeps saying common mode because I'm an engineer. If the edge of the universe is solid ether, which is sublimating, so that the matter in the interior of the universe or galaxy can feed, then there would be a sort of gradient at the edge of the universe. And so light radiation that hits this gradient would be reflected at a lower frequency in much the same way that ocean waves are down converted, that's an engineering term, when they hit the gradient of a shoreline. Okay, but another explanation for the cosmic microwave background radiation also includes a rational explanation for Hubble's law. If we recall Hubble's law said that this is the universe. That galaxies at the edge of the universe are traveling faster and faster and faster, nearly, possibly even approaching the speed of light. Okay, that to me is completely ridiculous. But a better explanation is, since the ether is sublimating, it's flowing inward. The galaxies aren't traveling, but this ether is flowing inward, and as the ether flows inward, it loses velocity, and so it gives the appearance from an optical illusion that this is traveling faster and faster and faster, when in fact the ether is getting slower and slower and slower. And so that's down converting the appearance light. The other possibility, if we're like the Earth over here, it's possible, since the ether is flowing inward, I shouldn't have chosen black, is that a speck of light from this guy might get bent completely around, and so when we finally see it, it's so redshifted, but it looks like that galaxy is coming from over here when it's really somewhere over here. That's another possibility. I haven't had a chance to model to see if that's possible, but that may be something I do later as a afterthought. And so now we have a more rational explanation of Hubble's law, and the microwave background rate, because the ether is flowing in, it could possibly be sublimating off the edge of the universe at the speed of light. Okay, but the actual barrier of the speed of light is barrier of the edge of the universe is not traveling at the speed of light, which is sane, but the sublimation may be fast enough that it may give the appearance of speed of light, or maybe the two-way trip of the light with the previous example, because it's a gradient. All those things mixed together to give the appearance of the reflected light as if it's being shifted by something moving at the speed of light, and that would be a better, more sane explanation of the microwave background radiation, rather than the edge of the universe is traveling near the speed of light, which is so ridiculous. So a recap, I provide an explanation for the following. Why is the space between galaxies so clean? How do galaxies get their spiral shape? How can galaxies look like they're traveling faster than the speed of light? And this is just an optical illusion. And what is a couple of possible causes, or even it's a combined cause, for the common mode, cosmic microwave background radiation. And I give it my explanation, what I think black holes are, which singularity never really fit well with me. To me, singularity is what these physicists call, singularity just says to me we have a problem with math, because the singularity is divided by 0. I don't buy into this singularity nonsense. Singularity to me is a flaw in mathematics, or a flaw in our models. That's a better way to say it. So what's next? In video 28 part 2 is next. We're going to continue the ether viscosity discussion and make the conclusion to planetary precession. In video number 30 we start the hardcore mathematics and electromagnetic physics part. I'm all done with the Distinti's universe. I may come back to it at the very end if there's time, and do some continuations on stuff, whatever. Anyway, thank you. This is Maxwell with the Kung Fu right hand rule grip, And if you could donate, I would appreciate it. Go to my website, distinti.com. There's a donate. My website's really, poor, not well updated right now. It's got to be updated. And if you could give me thumbs ups and likes and all that stuff, and if you subscribe, you'll get the videos faster, or you'll get the videos when they come out. You'll be automatically notified by YouTube. Thank you.